Hello, everyone. Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce Redneck Radio Man. And joining me today is going to be Chris Dedman. And we're going to be discussing the paranormal, ghost, and I'd say perhaps demonology, and if there's any connection with the everything combined. So, Chris, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing just fine. Like I say, I know you've been on A&E and a few other shows. So before we go into all of that, why don't we talk about what got Chris Dedman involved in doing this kind of research or study in the first place?
There was a couple of things. I had, at the age of 13, I was involved in a firework accident where a Roman candle, which is about the size of a tennis can, had a short fuse on it, and it went off, and when it did, it tipped and it exploded in my face.
Ouch.
And needless to say, I had third-degree burns from about the middle of my forehead, middle of my head all the way down underneath my...
Chris, are you still with me?
And I had a quarter-size hole right above my left eye. And on the way to the hospital, I which means they lost me. And in the midst of that happening, I had an out-of-body experience. I actually sat next to myself. If anybody's ever seen or been in an ambulance, usually if you're looking in through the back door to the left is where they'll have the stretcher. To the right, there's usually a long bench or a long seating area right there. And I sat on that, and I watched as the paramedics worked fiercely to try to bring me back. And there was a lot of details about the trip that I could tell people, and there was no way that I would have known due to the fact that, one, I was completely blind at the time, and I was facing out looking out the back of the ambulance. And what I'm talking about is there's a point where we'd come up on an intersection and there was a car that would not get out of the way. And I told everybody what color that car was, and it was a 4-door gray car. And that there was a woman driving it, and she wouldn't move. So, and there's no way I could have known that because I wasn't able to see, nor if I could, I would be facing out the back of the ambulance. So, I learned at a young age that, after that experience, I would have deja vu a lot. I would see things before they would happen. When family members started to pass away, I would see them the night of, and not in dream form, but in real life. One of my very first ghost experiences, seeing an actual ghost, was at the age of 15. I was at Gettysburg Battlefield in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and was filming the movie. At the time, it was called Killer Angels, and they would later change the name to actual Gettysburg before it went to to the theaters. And we had kind of snuck into the park, and not in a rebel way, but just a curiosity way, because we had heard all of the reenactors and stuff talking about the ghosts of Gettysburg and all that. And if anybody's been in Gettysburg, you know that you're not supposed to be in there after dark. So we kind of snuck in, and we were walking across the field where Pickett's charge was. And it was a clear night. Stars were out. It was absolutely a beautiful evening. And I can remember looking off to the right, which is where the federal line would have been, and this fog started rolling in. And it became very thick very quick. And we kind of were joking around being, teenage boys, and I was talking about the movie The Fog, and, we better get out of here, it's going to suck us in, and just joking and stuff. And in the midst of this joking and horseplay, we could hear drumming, and we knew that they were supposed to be filming a night scene that night, and we just kind of figured that we were hearing the drumming sound for that because it started out very low and very little, and then it progressively got louder and got closer, right when it was basically right up on us, the fog kind of cleared out in a circle form, and a whole unit of Confederate soldiers marched right out of the fog, right in front of us and back into the fog. And it was pretty detailed. You could see, the guns and the buttons on the coats, and it was very vivid. There was a lot of detail there, and that kind of spruced it, got the ball rolling, if you want to say. At that point, I started trying to read and find out what I could find out, and we would do the cemetery thing and abandoned buildings and stuff like that, and one of my going back to the beginning when I was talking about one of the times I could see when family members pass away is one of the greatest memories was my grandfather had passed away. He was a paramedic, and he had started out as a police officer when he was real younger, and then he went to the fire department, and then he retired as a paramedic because he had cancer, and it came on real quick. But he wore dark dress slacks and I call them old man boots, but they're the black boots that zip up the side, and he would wear a white Hanes T-shirt, and his uniform shirts were always kept at the station. So when he would come home, he would just have his pants and a white T-shirt on. But every time he would get out of the car, his left pant leg would always get stuck on his boot. It would never fall down. And I would pick on him about, when I was a kid. Well, the night that he passed away, I was in the living room, and I was sleeping on the couch, and I heard the back door open and heard it shut. And I sat up on the couch because I was waiting to see, who's coming in. And it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I was sitting there watching, and as I watched in the doorway that leads from the living room to the kitchen, my grandfather was standing there looking at me. And he had on his white T-shirt and his blue dress pants, and his pant leg was up over top the boot like it always was. And he smiled at me, and he turned and walked down the hallway towards his bedroom. And the next morning, when I was eating breakfast with my grandmother, she had mentioned that she felt that my grandfather was there with her last night. And now my curiosity has got me going. And I asked her, I said, well, what do you mean, Granny? Why do you think, Papa here? And she said, well, when he would come home every evening from work, he would kiss me on the forehead, and I felt him kiss me on the forehead last night. And I said, well, what time was it? And she goes, well, I remember looking at the clock, and it was about 3:05, 3 p.m., something like that. And that was one of the best, feelings in the world, to know that I had, what I'd seen was seen also by someone else, or felt by someone else at that point. So it's kind of been around me as a kid growing up, whether it's a family member or, being at Gettysburg, or I always feel like there's always been a drawn to spirits. And, in talking and getting people in the field and talking with others, they said that what's been explained is that I've crossed over and came back, that there's a possibility that they know that, the spirits know that I've been to the world and come back, and they see that as a way of communicating, and that, maybe they're trying to reach out to me because, they need help, or they want to cross over, or whatever. And it is what it is, I guess.
Well, it kind of reminds me of a story that my sister, well, not a story, but basically what happened to my sister when her husband died not long ago. She had people working on her house, and according to her, not about maybe 3 days after he died, paranormal activity started happening around the house, tools moving, faucets dripping, like all of them coming on at one time, and, various other phenomena. And she said that some of the workers would even quit working on the house because they was afraid of what was going on.
Absolutely.
But she said that she finally just said, Jerry, if that's you, you're scaring me, and please stop. She said that was the last she heard of it. So maybe it was him, and he decided to listen to her.
She probably wishes it was that easier in the early life, right?
Now, if I understand your website correctly, you spend most of your time trying to help people that are having one form of paranormal activity or another. Is that correct?
Absolutely. where my roots are, and I've seen a lot of people get on TV shows and stuff, and they just lose sight of where they came from. They kind of get that starstruck in them, and they all about being famous and trying to make money. And let me tell you, you're not going to make money in this field, nor are you going to make money on TV unless you happen to get that big break and you're, a Zach Bagans or a Grant and Jason or whatever. Most of these shows, it's just, you volunteer your time and you pay money to go be on the show in a sense, because it's your gas, and if you got to eat, you pay for that. They don't cover any of those expenses. It's all out of your expense. And, I've been offered my own show, 3 or 4 times now, and I haven't found that right offer yet, I guess you want to say, because I don't want to lose reality in what we're doing and why we're doing it. It's my motto has always been, it's not about, it's not about finding ghosts, it's about helping people. The ghost part is just a bonus in a sense. That's what we do this for. We do it to help people, and we're counselors, and we're electricians, we're firemen, we're whatever it may be that these people need. That's what we're there for. I had a woman that was emailing me and swearing up and down that she had demons in her bushes and she couldn't sleep at night, and there was odd smells coming into her house. And, this went on for a while, and finally we were able to make it over there, and we did an investigation. The first thing I did was an EMS sweep in her bedroom, and she had a ceiling fan that was putting off, like a 14.6 millibar. And then I went, then next to the bed, she had the breaker box, and it was putting off like 36 something millibar. Well, no wonder you felt like you had in your bush. You had all this magnetic energy around, where you slept at night that was creating basically, somewhat of a vortex, and it was messing with her brain. It was an unsafe environment, in a sense. And then, then we got thinking, well, her house backed up to a farm. So we're thinking, well, maybe she's picking up the smells, her air conditioning is pulling in the smells from the farm, because the barn wasn't that far away. And, being in Kentucky, when they clean the stalls, it's not the best smelling thing, and you can smell it for miles when they do it. And so we climbed up underneath the house to see, if there was maybe a dead animal or something else. And we got up underneath there, and the former tenants had left a bunch of polyurethane and paint thinner and brush cleaner and all this stuff sitting on top of the unit. And some of the cans had deteriorated. And so every time that unit kicked on, it was sucking those smells into the house, which basically was making everybody high. So between the electric magnetic energy, from the ceiling fan that wasn't wired right, the breaker box being next to the bed, and the fumes being sucked into the house, I'd probably be seeing demons too, So, luckily we were able to come in and we caught all this, and, she was able to get an electrician to come in and see what was going on with that, and got that. There was a lot of major wiring that had been done wrong. I called it a 90-day house. It's one of those houses where they drop the slab, and 90 days later there's a brand new house sitting on top of it. And they build the whole neighborhood in 3 weeks. But there was a lot of things that were done wrong. Yeah, exactly. And there was a lot of things that were done wrong. And then the chemicals, the fire department came in and they removed the chemicals that were up underneath the house that the former owners had left there and never told them about. So you put a metal can in a damp, moist area, eventually it's going to rust, and it's going to get, it's going to start breaking down. And so, no wonder. But, at that point, we had to become, a hazmat team and, electricians and counselors and, just that's what it's all about. I tell people all the time, if you're in it to get famous or you're not ready to dedicate your life to it, you need to not get into it, because it's not what you see on TV. You don't go in there for 4 hours and then review your evidence and go back and say, oh, here it is. I've got some cases I've been working 2 to 3 years on. It's just, that's the way it is. I've got clients that call me at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, because something's going on, and they need that comfort. They need somebody to talk to help explain what's going on.
Yeah, I know that is an issue, and I also know that a lot of these paranormal shows that you mentioned, like Psychic Kids, Paranormal State, Ghost Labs, Extreme Paranormals, all of them, the majority of them, they're really only on TV for sometimes a season, sometimes two, but they don't usually stay on long, and they usually move a different show in its place, further down the road. So even if you were looking at it going into money, it wouldn't be long lasting enough to go in that route. Very few shows make it very far. I think Paranormal State's one of the few that had stayed on for several seasons, but most of them I don't think make it past one or two.
Yeah, look at Ghost Lab, great concept. I mean, it was, there's a lot of things about the shows that I could, we could all pick and piece and pull from, and they're not all that bad. And the first, everybody needs to realize it's for TV, folks. It's for TV. Keep that in mind. It's for entertainment, and ratings is what makes the show, and that's what makes money, and that's how they continue to be on TV. Ghost Lab, Brad and Barry, I've talked to them, several times. I've hung out with them at conventions. They've been on my radio show, and they wanted to keep it as real as possible. They wanted to keep it, down to, this is what we do to investigate. This is the equipment that we use. This is what it's about. Sometimes we find stuff, sometimes we don't. Another thing people got to realize too is when they do these shows, they'll film at 15, 20, even 30 locations, but they only take the top 6, 7, or 8 and take the best of those, and that's how they make a season. It's not like they just went to those 8 places and they got lucky and found something at all 8 of those places. They went to 30 or more places, and then they found stuff at 8 or 6 or 8 of them, and that's one of the biggest things we always hear too is, God, how did they go to a location and every time they find something? Well, it's not every time. They just show you the ones they did. And, Ghost Lab was a great concept. It was more equipment based and what we really do as paranormal investigators. They weren't introducing anything new. It was stuff that we already did, but unfortunately, people wanted to watch a show about people that lived in a swamp and hunted alligators.
Yeah.
And that, that's what people wanted to see. They didn't want to see the technical end of what we do in this field. And so, Swamp People became, their top rated show, and it took their spot, and, eventually it replaced them. That's entertainment. That's how it is.
Yep.
And, there's a lot of people. I'm friends with a lot of people that have been on GHI. And, when those people go to be on these shows, if your boss doesn't understand that you could get a call today and have to be on the road tomorrow, but you're only going to be gone 3 or 4 days, and then you'll be back for, 5 or 6 weeks. If your boss doesn't understand that, you're going to lose your job. So there's a lot of people that sacrificed their families and their jobs and stuff to go be a part of these things. And sometimes they made it, sometimes they didn't, so think about that.
Yeah. Well, it was either Barry or Brad. I can't remember which one on my show not long ago. And they was sharing some similar information as to what you're sharing. But before I forget this, I want to mention to everybody that if you want to know more about Chris Dedman, his website's www.chrisdedman.com. And you can also Google his name, Chris Dedman. And he's got contact info on his website and everything you need to learn a little bit more about him and what he does. But coming back to what we were talking about, if I can refine my place, I wanted to get that web address out there because sometimes I get to talking and I don't mention it till the end of the show.
No problem. I appreciate it. And through the website, you can link to my Facebook and everything. Also, it's all linked through the website.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Now, also, I was going to mention that from what I know of the people that work in paranormal, especially the ghost end of it, parapsychologists, ghost hunters, investigators, whatever they want to go by. Well, actually, a parapsychologist is different than a ghost investigator, but what I am saying is sometimes they want to be called ghost hunters, sometimes ghost investigator. But the whole point being, though, is there's some discrepancy going on in the field. And I'm sure you've heard of this before, that some people will say, well, there's no such thing as ghosts. These are demons. And other people say, no, these can't be demons. These are ghosts. And then you got the people that play the middle field. So I thought maybe you could help clear some of that up.
Well, I'm actually doing a lot of studying right now, and I tried to stay away from it. I've never claimed to be a demonologist ever. I do talk about demons. I talk about demonology. I talk about angels, and it's through the Catholic perspective, and just simply because of a case that I worked that involved a girl that became possessed, and I've seen what can happen, and I gained a lot of thirst for knowledge. And when you read, for those that are religious, when you read, it says in the Bible that there is no in between. It's either when you die, you go to heaven or you go to hell. There is no trapped vortex. There's no, parallel world. You don't walk, on the earth. You go to either heaven or hell. Now, there are instances where God has sent, souls back to earth, just because it wasn't their time, but that's a very, very rare instance when that happens. But, there are other things. There are angels. We know that. We all have a guardian angel that watches over us. But I'm under my research and what I'm starting to study, I'm learning a lot. And, keep in mind, I'm not trying to push my faith on anybody, by no means, but in my faith and what I'm reading and what I'm studying, they're demons, regardless, whether it's a good demon or there's different levels of demons. There's a stage 1 demon is something that's going to be malevolent. It's going to be, it's going to be more the poltergeist things that get moved, or whatnot. And then you're going to go all the way up to a 10, which is going to be, something like Legion or something like that, where we're talking possession and we're talking about, people being attacked and whatnot. And that in itself is all of another new show. And it's a new topic for me that I'm learning about. I'm digging and searching and wanting to know about myself. Is, think about it, and you gotta look at the whole big picture. You gotta get outside the box. And this is where people, we as humans, we've got to grasp and feel and touch and see things a lot of times for us to believe it. If we can't do that, we don't want to believe it. It's all hearsay. But when you take away God, all that's left is the devil. Now, the devil's purpose is to destroy man because you were made in the image of God. We know that. It's in Scripture. It talks about that. Lucifer got comfortable and thought that he should be an equal right to God. And God real quick told him that wasn't going to happen, and he cast him out of heaven with his followers. And so their sole purpose is to destroy us, and they're going to do whatever it takes, whether it's take the form of a girl or your grandmother that passed away or whatever it could be. This is their mission. Their mission is to destroy our faith and our want to be with God. And they're going to do whatever it takes to do that. And I'm sure the chat room is buzzing like crazy right now. And like I said, these are things I'm studying, and I'm pulling it from, I'm reading books that actual exorcists from Italy. These are the real deal. I'm reading their journals and their memoirs and books that they have written, and they cross-reference Scripture a lot. So there's no question of where you're getting that from. They're actually stating the Scripture to go with it. And, I hope someday I'm able to be able to do that too, and say, well, if you read 2 Corinthians, verses 12 through 14, it tells, I'm not at that level yet. I'm not claiming to be, I'm in just the very minute first stages, but I've been around Father Bob Bailey, Father Andrew Calder, Bishop Long. I've listened to these people lecture, and I've, John Zaffis, and, if you're a religious person and you believe in God and you believe that there's a heaven and a hell, it tells you that, what walks the earth are the fallen angels. They're demons, and there's different levels of them. There is no in between. It's either there is or there isn't, but I'm also one of those two that has to feel, touch, and see, and it makes me, it's hard for me to think that if somebody's life was taken before that was supposed to be taken, that they may have unfinished business before they can go, because I've been on an investigation where I've seen, Keith Johnson cross somebody over, and that was a very spiritual, earth-moving experience. So
Right.
it's, these are questions I'm going to have for God one day. Let me tell you. If this is how it is, then how was this? What happened? Was it that this angel just got lost and it needed help getting to you, and that's why it came to Keith that day? One of the, I've been studying the ghost box for 2 years now, and one of the very first experiences I had with it was we were at the Stonehouse Inn in outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I was on the third floor with a group, and it came through and asked for Keith Johnson by a first and last name. And I didn't even know that they were there yet, because when we started the investigation, they hadn't arrived. And when it came through and asked, I said, "Do you want Keith Johnson?" And it said yes, plain as day. So I said, "Well, okay, I can go see if he's here, I guess." I said, "Well, I'm going to end the session." I sealed it, and then I went downstairs, and I said, "Hey, is Keith got here yet?" And about that time, he walked out of a room. He was with another group. They had gotten there and were with a group, and he said, "Yeah, this is Keith." And I said, "Keith, they're calling for you upstairs." And he goes, "Who's calling for you?" I said, "I don't know, but it's coming through the ghost box." And Keith was new to the ghost box at this time too, and we went up there, and I turned it back on, and I said, "Okay, I'm back," and it said, "You're here?" And I said, "Yes, I'm here." And it said, "Keith?" And I said, "Yes, Keith's here." And it said, "Keith Johnson?" And I said, and then Keith at that point stepped in and said, "Yes, this is Keith. What do you need?" And it said, "Help." And he asked, "Do you need help crossing over?" And it said, "Yes." And he crossed the spirit over right through using the box. The crazy thing about it is there's been topical debate about different things and stuff. There were no Mr. Microphones around, so nobody was coming through the box and manipulating it in any formal way. It was a controlled environment. I could see everybody that was involved. I had people out in the hallway to make sure that there was nobody contaminating the area, and these were people I trusted. And, it was a wonderful thing to see this happen, to see, a spirit, whether it was lost or whatever, get crossed over and go to the light. It was a great experience. So there's a lot there. It's as big of a mystery as do ghosts exist and are there Sasquatches in your backyard? It's a big mystery to all of us, and I'm hoping, someday when I'm 60 or 70 or whatever, and I'm doing this interview again, by that point I will have read thousands of books and worked with thousands of different people and have a better understanding. But, I don't know it all. And there's a lot of us that don't know it all, but there's a lot of us that do network and work together to help each other out and help understand it the best we can.
Right.
The demon world, when you start talking about demons and angels and stuff, there is no time frame to them. A week to us is a day to them, in a sense.
I've heard that
There
before.
is no, what's that?
I said I've heard that before.
Absolutely. They pick and choose when they want to let us know that they're there, or they want to do what they want to do. There could be a demon watching somebody for years, but in their time, it could only be a week. There's a difference in time there. And we don't know the long-term effect of what we're doing. Is this going to affect our children's children's children? What I did in the case that I worked that involved a demon in a possession, will that demon attack, continue to attack my kids and their grandkids when I'm long gone? We don't know. We don't know the true outcome of what we're doing. And that's why when I do my lectures and stuff, I tell people, make sure this is what you want to do. Make sure you're ready, because you don't pick your case. The case picks you. And back in '08, I had come to a point in my life where I had lost both my grandfathers to cancer. I was questioning a lot of things. I wasn't getting answers. And I challenged God. I said, if you're real, if you really do exist, then you need to show me that you exist. And to this day, I wish I never would have said that, but I did. And there was no taking it back. And it wasn't but a few months later, I was given a case that was 8 hours away. What were the coincidences of us getting this case, considering how far it was away? And I seen through this case, I seen what evil can do, what a demon can do to a person, to their soul, and I seen what God can do to come in and fix it. So be careful what you ask for, because you may just get what you ask for. And
that's what I've heard too.
It changes a lot of things. I have a huge respect for God. Now, I've seen it. I've seen what evil and what good can do. I was there. I know what this family went through. I know what, the trials and tribulations of everybody that was involved. I also know how everybody's been affected. I also know that I maybe get 3 to 4 hours of sleep at night. I have horrible nightmares, and this thing has made its presence known to me, a handful of times. There was one night that I thought for sure that I was going to die. It came into my home. I had let my guard down. I was completely paralyzed. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I couldn't do anything. And I felt this thing climb right across the top of my body, and I could feel its breath on my face, and it had the deepest, darkest, ugliest red eyes I'd ever seen in my life, and the nastiest grin I'd ever seen. And if it wasn't for the fact that I was wearing a St. Michael and a St. Benedict and a cross that had been blessed, that slid down out from beneath my shirt and exposed itself, it probably would have took my soul that night. I know it would. I feel that. I know. But, God was there,
Mm-hmm.
But he let me experience. He let me see what can be done. And
right.
He will. It will test your faith. Yeah, that's what it's going to do.
Okay.
And,
go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I'm just saying, you got to be prepared for that. You've got to be, it will change, your life will be changed forever. There's nothing, you can't say, okay, I don't want to do this no more, put my stuff up and put it in the closet. It don't work that way. Once you're marked by the demonic world, you're marked for life. That's what it is. You can't just walk away. And people have asked me that several times. They say, well, why don't you just quit? Well, I can quit, but it's not going to quit me. So why quit when I can continue to do it and help people and help others understand what they are going to maybe someday face and deal with, and continue to do good for the field.
Okay. Well, also, earlier on, you made a comment that I wanted to readdress about, there's been very rare cases that God allowed people to come back to earth that had died before their time, so to speak. I'm probably wording that wrong, but I'm sure you remember what you were saying. Can you mention a case where God has actually done this, what you're referring to?
I think it's called an angelic possession, and the Watsika Wonder, Watsika, Kansas, is one of the greatest representations of this. Basically, there were 2 young ladies. One was in, around 19 or so, and she had became what her family thought was crazy, and she was admitted to a to a mental hospital and stuff, and she eventually died in there. And, we need to fast forward, several years, and then here comes along this 14-year-old girl, and she starts experiencing the same things, and she, comes back as the girl, the 19-year-old that passed away, comes back into her body, and the father of the older girl intervenes and keeps them from submitting this child to this mental hospital that he had done years prior to, and watched her die there, and asked if they could take her home. And, the whole story is kind of crazy, because you're kind of thinking, wow, you're going to let your child go with some strangers, and, it was just an odd situation. But if you Google Watsika Wonder, I'm going blank here. learned some venom, and I just completely went blank. I've lost my thoughts here. Sorry. But,
I've had that happen. I had it happen to me just earlier.
Exactly. I just completely went blank. I've lost both of the girls' names, and I apologize for that. But you know, the Booth brothers actually did one of their specials was about the Watsika Wonder and what happened, you know, with this. And this child basically is overtaken by this 19-year-old that had died several years before her, and for a year she lived as her. And, you know, she knew everything about the girl and lived in this younger girl's body. And then one day she came out and said, okay, it's time for me to go. My time here is done. It's time for me to leave. And when she exited, the younger girl came up out of it and remembered absolutely nothing. She didn't know why she was at the house that she was at. And, you know, life went on as normal. Now, it's noted in her memoirs that the only other time that she saw this older girl was when she was giving birth and she was having a hard time. And she came through and was there basically as a guardian angel and helped her through the labor and a successful, you know, birth of the child. But it you know, that's one of the perfect, and that's one of the first noted you know, possessions in America. You know, it happened back in the 1800s. You know, and they call that an angelic possession because it was, you know, there was for some reason that this girl had unfinished business. You know, it wasn't your common possession where, you know, what you see on TV or what you've heard where, you know, of evilness. It was just like this girl came back and took over this younger girl's body and lived a normal life for a year, and then she was done. It was her time to go. And a lot of people think that it was the fact that, you know, because her parents were they were so heartbroken and so lost because of what had happened, and they blamed themselves for putting her in the mental hospital and her dying and stuff, that this was, you know, God didn't want to see them suffer, so he sent her back, you know, to ease their pain and help them realize that, you know, what they did was what anybody would have normally done, especially back then. You know, there was a lot of people, you know, we know there's documented cases that there was a lot of people, and even to today, that are being put in mental homes and stuff that might not really be mental. They may not really have split personalities. They very well could be possessed. And one of the biggest comments that I hear a lot of is people talk about, you know, oh, everybody's claiming to have demons. Everybody's claiming to be possessed. And yes, they are. Trust me, I get tons of emails and phone calls of, you know, oh, I've got a demon in my house, or my neighbor's cat is a demon, or whatever. But something that people need to also cautiously, you know, watch where you tread is the fact that religion in America, the claiming of religion in America since the 90s has dropped almost 10%, meaning that we as Americans are not claiming religion in our life or practicing it as well as we did, you know, 12, 15 years ago. And when you take God out of the equation, the devil is going to replace that. Not only that, but because of the paranormal shows, and specifically the ones like Paranormal State, it's allowed people to come out and talk about these issues and what could really be going on, where in the past they couldn't, because they would be put into a mental home and called crazy and put a white coat on them and put them in a padded room. You know?
Right. I've heard tell of that.
You know, I'll be the first one to tell you that no, not everybody's got demons, and no, not everybody's possessed. But you need to take into, you know, perspective of the whole bigger picture. You know, a good friend of mine, Paul Browning, who's an author, you know, he talks constantly about thinking outside the box, looking outside the box. We've got to look outside the box. It's not, as the days and age change, it's not the same as it was when Lorraine and you know, the Warrens were doing it. You know, times have changed, and you've got to change with the times.
Okay. Now, my wife was also in the chat room, and she was wanting to know if they still do exorcisms in the U.S.
they do exorcism in the U.S. There are very few people that have been given permission by the church to do exorcisms. And that opens up a whole another can of worms right there, because everybody, I've seen, especially on Facebook and stuff, a certified demonologist or a certified exorcist or whatever, and there is no certification for that. You have to be given the proper training and the proper clearance from the church to do that. You can't just go out and do exorcisms because you feel like you can do it. That's something that the church, you go and get trained by the church and the people of the church, and they set you to be that person to go out and do the exorcisms. You don't just do them on your own. And, there's a lot of people out there that are claiming, they're doing exorcisms and stuff, and they're going to come across someone that one day that really is possessed, and it's going to cause one heck of a mess, because that's just something you don't play with. There are prayers and special things that you have to be prepared and be able and to use to do these exorcisms.
Okay. I was going to also ask you, back to my questioning.
Like a McDonald's down the road, there's just not.
Chris? Chris? Uh-oh. Well, folks, I'm not exactly sure, but I think I might have accidentally lost Chris. I think perhaps maybe his cell phone battery might have went dead if he was on a cell phone. He doesn't show to have disconnected, but I don't hear him talking. Let me mention to everybody real quick that my next show, I don't think I got a show for this Saturday because of the Christmas holiday. But my next show is going to be Tuesday, December 27th, UFO Anomalies with Stan Gordon. I want to invite everybody to make sure they show up. And, oh, yeah, I show that I lost them. Give me 1 second and I'll try to call them back. Oh, I got to get his phone number before I can call him. Maybe. Wait. Oh. I think I'm still connected, but not him. All right, let me go to my mailbox and get his phone number. Evidently, he either got dropped or his phone went dead or something. So I'm going to see if I can raise him. Give me just a moment. Okay. Got the number. Opening Skype and add to conference. There it goes. It's ringing.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. 85980627792 is not available.
Hey, Chris, I just called you back because I lost contact with you on the air. I'm assuming that your battery on your cell phone went dead or something. or you had technical issues on your other end. I'll be in touch with you later about that, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap the show. We got through 45 minutes at least anyway. Thanks.